Hamlet is one of William Shakespeare's finest and most famous masterpieces. On the surface, it's a classic revenge tragedy. The King of Denmark is murdered, and his son, Prince Hamlet, must kill the murderer to reclaim the throne. In any other play, the hero would just grab a sword and the story would be over. But Hamlet isn't like other heroes. He's a philosopher, a student, and a man cursed with a brilliant, hyperactive mind. We return to Hamlet because he shows a common human problem. The more we think, the less we act. He represents the kind of paralysis where we believe we're being careful, but are actually doing nothing. Shakespeare describes this state as the pale cast of thought. The moment when too much thinking drains the energy and urgency from an idea that once had the power to change a life. So if you feel stuck in your own head, constantly weighing options but never actually making a move, it could be because you're suffering from that same pale cast of thought. Which is why we're going to take a look at the 6 questions we can extract from Hamlet's tragedy that, if answered correctly, might just put an end to your overthinking for good. Question 1. Is this a ghost or a reality? The play begins on the cold, dark battlements of Elsinore Castle. A ghost, appearing to be Hamlet's dead father, surfaces from the mist. And it reveals a horrific truth. The king didn't die of a snake bite as everyone believes. He was murdered by his own brother Claudius, who poured poison in his ear while he slept. The ghost demands that Hamlet takes revenge. As we mentioned, Hamlet is a scholar. He immediately begins to doubt his own senses. He thinks, what if this is a demon sent to tempt me? What if I'm hallucinating out of grief? Because he can't be 100% sure that the ghost is real, he does nothing. He doesn't confront Claudius directly. Instead, he begins a long process of observation and testing. Hamlet tells himself that once he has undeniable proof, then he'll act. In the meantime, he remains trapped in thought, replaying the situation over and over in his mind. This mindset is the hallmark of the overthinker. We tell ourselves, I'll launch the project once I'm sure it won't fail, or I'll commit once I know it's the right path. And like Hamlet, we wait for absolute certainty. But absolute certainty is a myth. Most things that cause hesitation are ghosts, mental projections fueled by fear rather than concrete reality. To escape Hamlet's fate, adopt the 70% rule. The logic is simple. If you have about 70% of the information and feel about 70% confident, that's enough to move forward. The remaining clarity usually only comes after you act. Action is often the only way to find out whether what you feel is a real problem or just uncertainty holding you back. Question 2. Am I thinking too precisely on the event? Halfway through the play, Hamlet's travelling to England when he encounters a young prince named Fortinbras leading a massive army. These soldiers are marching to fight for a tiny, worthless patch of land in Poland. A straw not even big enough to bury the men who'll die for it. Hamlet is stunned. He watches these men risk everything for a mere shadow of honour, while he, who has a murdered father, a disgraced mother, and a stolen throne, is still stuck in his own head, paralysed by deliberation. He realises his fatal flaw. He's been thinking too precisely on the event. He's been breaking every goal down into so many sub-scenarios and what-if branches that the original spark of courage is diluted until it becomes cowardice. He's analysed the problem so thoroughly that the problem has died on the operating table. In modern psychology, we call this analysis paralysis. It occurs when the fear of making a wrong choice leads to making no choice at all. We take a simple goal like starting a business, writing a book, or joining a gym, and we slice it up into 1,000 tiny problems. We worry about the taxes, the branding, the lighting, and the potential for criticism before we've even bought a notebook. The over-analysis creates a mental friction that wears down our willpower. So, when you make a task complex, you unconsciously give yourself a valid excuse to delay it. To break the cycle of thinking too precisely, you must practice aggressive simplification. You have to move from the precision of the event to the essence of it. So if you find yourself stuck, zoom out and simplify. Reduce the task to the next one step. If you want to run a marathon, the precision is the 16-week heart rate monitored training plan. The essence is simply putting on your shoes and walking out the front door. When you strip the task down to its simplest form, you remove the extra paths that fear tends to latch onto. Question 3. Am I solving the problem, or just watching myself think? Hamlet is paralyzed by doubt, by what-ifs. So to settle his mind, he hires a troupe of travelling actors to perform a play called The Murder of Gonzango, but he adds his own lines to it, so that the story mimics exactly how his father was killed, calling the project The Mousetrap. His goal is to watch King Claudius's reaction to see if he looks guilty. He famously tells the actors that the purpose of their art is to hold the mirror up to nature. But here's the irony. Hamlet's using the play as a sophisticated stalling tactic. Instead of confronting the king, he creates a simulation of the confrontation. He's an expert at directing the actors on how to be quote-unquote natural and truthful, yet he cannot be natural or truthful in his own life. He spends the entire play holding that mirror up to himself, watching himself feel grief, watching himself feel indecision, and writing poems about his own pain. He's fallen in love with the intellectual drama of being a tortured soul. To Hamlet, being a deep thinker has become a more attractive identity than being a functioning prince who actually does the work. Now think about your own life. How often do you hire your own troupe of actors? You buy the books, listen to the podcasts, and journal for hours about your inner block, all while avoiding the one thing that actually moves the needle. We mistakenly believe that the more we understand our problem, the closer we are to fixing it. But understanding why you're stuck isn't the same thing as getting unstuck. Insight without action is just a form of mental entertainment. You're essentially becoming a spectator of your own life. Overthinking is a closed-loop system. The more you look inward to find a solution, the more you feed the loop. So to break the mirror, you have to shift your focus to the external world. When you find yourself watching yourself think, stop the internal monologue and pick a physical task that has zero emotional weight. Clean your desk, lift heavy weights, or finish some boring administrative task. Movement in the physical world forces your brain to recalibrate based on concrete reality rather than internal projections. You can't think your way out of a thinking problem. You have to act your way out. Question 4. Am I waiting for the perfect kill? In his most famous soliloquy, Hamlet utters the line, "Thus conscience does make cowards of us all." He isn't talking about conscience in the way that we use it today, as a moral compass, but rather in the Elizabethan sense, intense self-consciousness. Hamlet is trapped in a loop of moral perfectionism. He finds his uncle Claudius alone and praying. This is the perfect moment for revenge. But Hamlet stops. He begins to conscience the situation. If I kill him while he's praying, his soul might go to heaven, and that's not revenge, that's a favour. By over-moralising the timing and the purity of the act, he lets the opportunity slip through his fingers. He uses doing the right thing as an excuse to do nothing. What he fails to realize is that once you act, perfection automatically comes along the way. Perfection isn't a prerequisite for movement, it's a destination reached through the refinement of action. In psychology, this is known as moral decoupling or perfectionist procrastination. We often mask our fear of failure as a high standard of integrity. We tell ourselves we aren't launching the website because it's not perfectly aligned with our brand values yet, or we don't have that difficult conversation because the timing isn't respectful enough, and so on. We believe we're being virtuous and careful, but in reality, we're using our conscience as a guard to keep us safe from the risks of the real world. Overthinkers often believe that if a move isn't 100% morally or logistically perfect, then it shouldn't be made at all. Chasing perfection is often just procrastination in disguise. An imperfect action today is almost always better than a perfect action that never happens. So don't ask, is this the best possible way? Ask, is this better than doing nothing? Be not afraid of greatness, Shakespeare wrote elsewhere, but for the overthinker, the advice should be not afraid of being just okay. At least it's a start. Question 5. Is this the ready or the rest? As we mentioned earlier, Hamlet spares Claudius, reasoning that killing a praying man would cleanse his enemy rather than punish him. Moments later, Hamlet confronts his mother. Hearing a movement behind the arras and believing it to be Claudius, he strikes blindly, killing Polonius instead. This single impulsive act sets a brutal chain of events in motion. Polonius was the father of Ophelia, the woman who Hamlet loved. Shattered by her father's death at her lover's hands, she spirals into madness and eventually drowns. Using the blood on Hamlet's hands as political leverage, Claudius exiles him to England with secret orders for his execution. Hamlet, however, survives the treacherous voyage and execution plot and returns to Elsinore. By the final act of the play, Hamlet is a changed man. He survived oceans, narrowly escaped an execution plot, and dealt with the crushing weight of the death of Ophelia. The frantic, hyper-analytical energy that defined him in the first 4 acts has burned out, replaced by a strange, quiet calm. He's invited to a fencing match with Laertes, Ophelia's brother, who's returned to Denmark seeking bloody vengeance against Hamlet. That Hamlet's friend Horatio rightly suspects is a trap. In the earlier scenes, Hamlet would have spent 3 monologues weighing the variables, checking for proof of the trap, and agonizing over the what-ifs. This time, however, he refuses to overthink it. He tells Horatio, "If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. That's all." He finally accepts that he cannot control the rest, the poison on the swords, the king's treachery, or the final outcome of his life. He stops trying to solve the future and focuses entirely on his own internal readiness to meet whatever the moment brings. Overthinking is usually a desperate, futile attempt to control the rest, the outcome, the response of others, or the long-term consequences of a choice. We often suffer from predictive anxiety, where we worry about how our 5-year plan will look before we've even mastered our 5-minute plan. We think that if we can just anticipate every possible variable, we can prevent pain or failure. But like Hamlet, we eventually learn that no amount of thinking can account for the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. The more we focus on predicting the rest, the less energy we have for being ready. And so to stop worrying about the rest, you must shift your focus from the external world, which is chaotic, to your internal state, which you can control. Instead of asking, "What if scenario X happens?" ask yourself, "Am I the kind of person who can handle whatever happens?" Shift from prediction to preparation. Invest in the foundation. Focus on your health, focus on your skills, on your discipline. If you're physically fit, mentally sharp, and disciplined, you don't need to know exactly what the future holds because you're ready for any version of it. When you focus on your own readiness, you realize that you don't need a map of the entire forest to take a step into the trees, to take the first step into the trees. You just need to know that you can handle the hike. Question 6. To be or to seem? In Hamlet's most famous line, he asks, to be or not to be? But counterintuitively, he's not talking about whether or not to exist, but rather whether to be real or merely seem real. Nearly every character lives behind a mask. Claudius, Hamlet's uncle and the new king of Denmark, seems noble and legitimate, but is secretly a murderer who killed his own brother. Gertrude, Hamlet's mother and the former queen, seems like a grieving widow, yet she marries Claudius only weeks after her husband's death. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, two of Hamlet's childhood friends, seem loyal and concerned for him, but are actually sent by the king to spy on him and report on his behaviour. And so Hamlet eventually becomes trapped in this same world of masks. He obsesses over how he's perceived, by the court, by his enemies, by his own mother, and even by history itself. He performs the role of the mad prince so convincingly that he begins to lose touch with who he actually is. In trying to manage his image, he ends up abandoning his very being. In today's world, this tends to show up as social overthinking. Most of our mental noise isn't about the work itself, it's about how we'll look while we're doing it. We over-edit messages, rehearse conversations, and delay action because we're afraid of seeming foolish, unqualified, or just imperfect. But the bitter irony is that we perform for an audience that's usually too distracted with their own insecurities to notice. The solution is radical authenticity. Stop asking, how will this be perceived? And start asking, is this true to me? When your actions align with what you actually believe and value, overthinking collapses. There's no mask to maintain and no role to rehearse. A person who is simply being doesn't need to manage appearances. They're too busy doing the work. After 5 acts of delay, doubt, and watching himself think, Hamlet finally achieves his goal, but at the highest possible price. He does eventually kill his uncle, Claudius, but it isn't through some calculated, masterful plan. Instead, he acts only when he's cornered, poisoned, and has mere minutes left to live. In the final scene, Hamlet's mother is dead from drinking poisoned wine meant for him. Hamlet himself has been struck by a poisoned blade. It's only in this moment of total desperation, where he no longer has the luxury to think precisely on the event, that he finally stabs the king. Hamlet slays his uncle, but he dies immediately after. Because he waited for the perfect certainty, the perfect plan, and the perfect moment, he lost his mother, his friends, his kingdom, and his life. He cleared the pale cast of thought only when death forced his hand. The tragedy of Hamlet isn't that he never acts, but that he waits until action can no longer save him. The lesson is simple. Don't wait until everything's already falling apart before you move. At that point, you're not choosing, you're just reacting. And that's our video. What did you think? Let's get into it in the comments. As always, I've been Dan, you've been awesome, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist. And for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.